Hey guys, you're watching Let's Talk About Prepping. I'm Tyler, your host, and in this video, I want to talk about something which is pretty controversial in prepping circles, but which may not be very controversial for you if there's no question in your mind whether or not you would do the thing that I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is a full stop hard no for lots of preppers, and that is trading guns. Now, that's in a grid down or collapse or SHTF situation because I've seen guns traded plenty in my life. Where I've lived, it's pretty common for guys to get a variety of different guns and try them out, and over time swap them with their buddies and try their guns out so that everybody who they work with or in their group of friends gets the opportunity to try out some different types of guns without spending the money to go and sell them and buy them back and stuff like that from a store. So, in a regular situation, it's not that uncommon for people to barter guns. But that doesn't necessarily apply to most grid down situations unless you're in a mutual assistant group where you're pretty happy to swap one kind of gun for another because one family group needs to have a certain thing covered. But in the prepping community, we often talk about bartering in a situation where either there's a barter market or we've gone to town and there's a checkpoint that we have to bribe our way through, or where we're trying to get some medicine or medical care for someone and there's a very steep price to be paid. And we often do tend to assume that things like food and practical items will have a much higher value over things like silver because you can't eat silver. And while I do have a contention with a lot of accepted barter knowledge because every situation will be unique and barter will be driven by need and not by convenience. I don't really want to get into that in this video except where it comes to firearms because I am of the opinion that it is a rare situation where danger is common that I would want to trade a firearm. When the grid goes down and you don't know when manufacturing capabilities will return, it is not necessarily a good idea to trade in something which becomes more valuable by the day and which may become a rarity if modern manufacturing of firearms never returns. And this is what a lot of people think of when they say that they would never trade a firearm. Firearms are the kinds of things that only gain in value and have an intrinsic and natural practical value to themselves. There is also the consideration that any ammunition or firearm or any weapon that you trade somebody can be used against you. But it's important to remember that things like food and tools are also strategic resources. So when you trade with anybody, you increase their fitness level as a whole and their ability to be a threat to you. So it's important to never trade with someone who you think may be a threat to you if you can help it. But again, trade is driven by necessity, and sometimes you may need to trade with people who you find undesirable, simply because the things that you will get from them are more important than what you think of them. But it would be ironic to be killed by bullets or weapons that you traded to a person, but no more deadly than being killed by a gun that they had hidden that you didn't think they had. So it's important to consider that anybody is a threat and anybody is armed, and to consider the trades that you make based on your need and the loss to you, and not necessarily by extraneous factors like their potential threat to you in the future. That's something that you should already be considering, and separately. Now, when it comes to bartering a firearm, the main thing that I can imagine being a situation where you might want to do that would be one in which you have all of your firearm needs taken care of, and you perhaps have some cheap throwaway firearms that you're willing to trade to get yourself out of ugly situations. For instance, where you are being manipulated by somebody else or essentially held hostage unless you can pay a high price to get through a checkpoint, or to avoid some corrupt police in a grid down situation, or any variety of situations. Maybe there's some medicine that is being marked up extravagantly at a barter market, but you need it to save someone's life. And in that situation, a firearm is sort of a trump card, if you will. That is something which most people will not be able to turn away from if you pull out a firearm to clinch a deal. Now, this would be a very rare situation that you would do this in, but there are a few different situations where you will not be able to rely on silver or food or tools or cigarettes or liquor or any of the variety of things that we talk about in the barter community as being potentially valuable items in a grid down situation. But it is commonly agreed that firearms will be almost inarguably the top value item in most of the situations that we talk about. And so for that reason, I do often consider whether or not it would be a good idea to have firearms which you yourself are not very fond of or wouldn't really want to use in a situation where your life depends on it, which is most situations where you're using a gun in a practical situation, not out on the range. But whether or not it would be a good idea just to have something that you could easily let go of, but which to somebody else would be more or less worth its weight in gold. Now, I did not buy this gun with that in mind. When I purchased this gun, I had just had a really good day in tips at work, and I went to the pawn shop, and they had this gun for, I want to say $40, but it might have been as much as $60, which was less than the tips that I had made that day. And so for the novelty of purchasing a firearm for just the tips and not even my day's wages, I went ahead and picked this thing up. I sort of like doing things for the novelty of them sometimes, and I just still get a kick out of this. And also do get a kick out of the idea that sometime in an extreme situation in the future, this gun, which I'm really not too fond of, but just really sort of like having around, might prove itself to be worth far more than the tips that I got one day at work if I have to give it to somebody to get my family through an ugly and potentially deadly situation, or to get something that is vital to our group. Now, this is not the kind of gun that I would ever really purchase for regular use. The ammunition is at least as expensive as what I like to use for my Carry 357. And of course, the 25 Auto is nothing compared to the 357, but oops, I am happy that I got it. It is something that I can hand to somebody if they need just a little pocket pistol. And, you know, I can't say that I would never use that to trade in an extreme situation. Now, some people might even be rich enough to have AR-15s and shotguns and pistols for all of the people in their group, and then start buying a stack of these kinds of guns for some extreme trade, but that's not me. Anyways, I hope that that just gave you some out-of-the-box thoughts on trading guns in a collapse type situation. I do try to come at things that are accepted as common knowledge and question them a little bit, because I do think that those are the kinds of things that will get preppers killed, simply not questioning common knowledge. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Share your thoughts in the comments down below, and stay safe out there.